Marcus Reynolds, a 58-year-old veteran FBI agent with 30 years of service, finds himself staring down the barrel of Officer Travis Wilson's gun in the frozen food section of Westfield Grocery. "FBI, I'm reaching for my credentials," Marcus announces calmly, but Travis's finger tightens on the trigger. "All you criminals say something fancy when caught." Travis sneers, completely unaware that across town, Police Chief Robert Jackson is about to receive a call that will end Travis's career forever. Before we dive deeper into this shocking confrontation, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. If you believe no one should face discrimination, regardless of their position or accomplishments, hit that like button right now. Subscribe to hear stories of justice that will restore your faith in humanity. Now let's rewind to see how a respected FBI agent ended up at gunpoint while simply buying groceries. Marcus Reynolds hadn't planned on becoming the center of a national controversy when he stopped by Westfield Grocery in Millfield, Virginia, that Tuesday evening. After 14 hours investigating a series of hate crimes targeting black-owned businesses across Northern Virginia, all he wanted was ingredients for a simple dinner, and perhaps a call with his daughter Amara, who was in her final year of pre-law at Howard University. At 58, Marcus was one of the FBI's most respected agents specializing in civil rights violations, with commendations that filled an entire wall in his modest home office. Since losing his wife Elaine to cancer 4 years ago, work and his daughter had become his entire world. His colleagues at the Bureau often remarked that Marcus possessed an almost supernatural calm under pressure, a quality that had served him well throughout his 3 decades of service. That same evening, 27-year-old Officer Travis Wilson began his patrol shift with the Millfield Police Department. 3 years on the force, and already the subject of 6 civilian complaints for excessive force, all quietly buried in internal affairs, Travis represented everything Marcus had spent his career fighting against. The young officer had graduated near the bottom of his police academy class, but had connections through his uncle, a city councilman, who had helped secure his position despite concerns from trainers about his temperament. What his personnel file didn't explicitly state, but fellow officers whispered about, was Travis's particular hostility toward minorities, especially successful black men who he felt had received special treatment. He'd been denied. Millfield itself was a town of 20,000 residents, where racial tensions simmered beneath a veneer of Southern hospitality. Founded before the Civil War, the town had only integrated its schools in the 1970s under federal order, and many older residents still referred to the East Side as the colored neighborhood, despite the diverse reality of modern demographics. Marcus, who had grown up in Millfield before leaving for college, and the FBI knew its complicated history intimately. He pushed his shopping cart down the frozen foods aisle, considering whether to splurge on premium ice cream when he noticed Travis enter the store. The call had come in 15 minutes earlier from Dale Whitman, a new cashier who had reported suspicious activity after seeing Marcus examine several items before placing them in his cart, a normal shopping behavior that Dale found threatening coming from a black man in a tailored suit. Marcus noticed the officer watching him but continued shopping, adding pasta sauce and garlic bread to his cart. This wasn't the first time he'd been profiled, and experience had taught him that acting naturally was his best defense. He wore civilian clothes, his FBI windbreaker folded neatly in his car, his credentials and service weapon properly holstered under his suit jacket, according to Bureau regulations. Travis approached with his hand already resting on his holster, feet spread in an aggressive stance. "Let me see some ID," he demanded without preamble or introduction. Marcus placed his hands visibly on the shopping cart handle. "May I ask why you need my identification, officer? I'm just doing some grocery shopping." Travis's face hardened. "We got a call about suspicious activity. You match the description." Marcus knew there had been no specific description beyond his race. "I'd be happy to provide identification, but I'd like to know what suspicious activity I'm alleged to have committed." Other shoppers began to slow their carts, sensing conflict. Travis moved his hand to unsnap his holster. "You questioning my authority? Show me some ID now, or things are going to get complicated." Marcus thought of all the similar moments throughout his life, even as he rose through FBI ranks, how the uniform he wore mattered less than the skin he lived in. He thought of the conversations he'd had with Amara about how to interact with police, the same conversations his father had with him decades earlier. "Officer, I'm going to reach for my wallet very slowly," Marcus said, his voice deliberately calm as Travis's hand now fully gripped his weapon. The young officer's face twisted with anger at Marcus's composure, at his articulate speech, at his refusal to be intimidated. "Make any sudden moves, and I promise you'll regret it," Travis warned, as other shoppers abandoned their carts and moved away, a mother quickly pulling her curious child behind a display of breakfast cereals. Marcus's fingers had barely touched his inside jacket pocket when Travis drew his weapon. "Hands where I can see them. Now." "On your knees, hands behind your head," Travis shouted, his service weapon aimed directly at Marcus's chest as frightened shoppers scattered in all directions. With practiced caution, Marcus slowly complied, decades of FBI training overriding his justified indignation. "Officer, I'm a federal agent with the FBI. If you allow me to reach inside my jacket, I can show you my credentials." His voice remained steady, despite the adrenaline coursing through his system. Travis sneered, moving closer with his weapon still raised. "Yeah, right. You people always come up with something. FBI, CIA just visiting from Wakanda. Get down on the ground now." The racial undertone was unmistakable. Marcus carefully lowered himself to the cold linoleum floor of the frozen food section, maintaining eye contact with Travis while calculating his options. Shoppers had formed a loose semicircle at a safe distance, several holding phones aloft to record the confrontation. "That's right, take him down," shouted an older white man from behind a display of orange juice. "Probably trying to rob the place." Marcus could see others in the crowd looking uncomfortable, exchanging concerned glances, but no one intervened. Travis roughly grabbed Marcus's arms, wrenching them behind his back with unnecessary force. "I am reaching for my credentials in my left inside jacket pocket," Marcus stated clearly for the benefit of the recording phones. "I am an FBI special agent currently conducting an investigation in this jurisdiction." Travis leaned in close, his breath hot against Marcus's ear. "Touch that pocket, and I'll put a bullet in you and say you went for a weapon." The store manager, Alicia Chen, a second-generation Chinese-American woman in her 40s, pushed through the gathered onlookers. "Officer, is this really necessary? This gentleman has been shopping here regularly for weeks. He's never caused any problems." Travis barely glanced at her. "Ma'am, back away now. This is police business. Interfere, and you'll be arrested for obstructing justice." Alicia hesitated, then stepped back, pulling out her own phone to record the situation. Marcus noticed that Travis's body camera, which should have been displaying a red recording light, remained suspiciously dark. "Your body camera appears to be off, Officer Ba," he observed calmly. "Department policy requires it to be activated during all civilian encounters." Travis's face flushed with anger. He keyed his shoulder radio, turning slightly away from the growing crowd. "Dispatch, this is Officer Wilson. I've got an armed suspect at Westfield Grocery claiming to be FBI, requesting immediate backup." He emphasized claiming making his disbelief clear. Marcus mentally reviewed his options. Physical resistance would only escalate the situation and potentially endanger bystanders. As a federal agent, he had certain protections, but only if he survived this encounter. He thought of Amara, of the promise he'd made to his late wife to be there for their daughter's graduation next spring. Maintaining his composure was his best strategy, even as his shoulder joints screamed from the unnatural position. Travis seemed increasingly agitated by Marcus's calm demeanor, mistaking professional training for disrespect. "You think you're better than me, don't you?" he hissed, tightening his grip on Marcus's arms. "Got your fancy suit and your made-up badge." Marcus measured his words carefully. "Officer Wilson, I'd like to inform you that Police Chief Robert Jackson is a personal friend of mine. Perhaps you'd like to contact him directly about this situation." Travis laughed derisively, loud enough for the onlookers to hear. "Oh, now you know the chief personally? That's convenient. Next, you'll tell me the mayor's your cousin and the governor's your golfing buddy." He leaned closer, voice dropping to a whisper meant only for Marcus's ears. "No more fairy tales, boy." The racial slur slipped out just quietly enough that the crowd couldn't hear it, but Marcus recognized the hatred behind it immediately. With practiced efficiency, Travis roughly handcuffed Marcus, the metal biting into his wrists. "You have the right to remain silent." He began reciting while Marcus noted with professional detachment that he had yet to be told what crime he was supposedly being arrested for. As Travis continued the Miranda warning, Marcus caught the eye of a young black woman in the crowd who was recording everything. He gave her a subtle nod, hoping she understood what he couldn't say aloud, that he would need witnesses to what was happening here. "Do you believe there are still people who abuse their authority based on racial prejudice?" Comment number 1. If you think police officers should be held accountable for their actions, regardless of who they target. Like this video if you agree that racism has no place in law enforcement. Subscribe to see more stories of justice prevailing against all odds. Now, what connection could possibly exist between an FBI agent and a small-town police chief that might change everything? Millfield, Virginia, summer of 1975. Two boys race their bicycles down Maple Street, laughing as they dodge potholes and parked cars. Marcus Reynolds, 8 years old, with skinned knees and a gap-toothed smile, pedals furiously to keep up with his best friend, Robert "Bobby" Jackson. They were an unlikely pair in a town still adjusting to integration. Marcus, the son of the town's first black dentist, and Bobby, whose mother cleaned houses for wealthy white families while raising 5 children alone. "Last one to the creek buys the sodas," Bobby shouted over his shoulder, standing up on his pedals for extra speed. Those carefree summer days defined their childhood, but as they grew older, the world increasingly reminded them of their differences. By middle school, they'd learned to navigate the racial tensions that permeated their town. When 3 white teenagers cornered Marcus behind the gymnasium, it was Bobby who arrived with a baseball bat and enough righteous fury to send them running. 2 years later, when Bobby's mother couldn't afford his basketball team fees, Marcus's father quietly paid them without being asked. Their friendship survived high school, despite being sorted into different social circles. Marcus excelled academically, earning a scholarship to Howard University, while Bobby's natural leadership made him captain of both the football and debate teams. The night before Marcus left for college, they sat on the banks of the same creek where they'd spent countless summer days. "I'm going to become an FBI agent," Marcus announced, skipping stones across the dark water. "Someone needs to make sure the law protects everyone equally." Bobby nodded thoughtfully. "I'm staying here, going to join the police academy after community college." When Marcus looked surprised, Bobby explained, "If we want things to change, someone has to change them from the inside." Their paths diverged but never truly separated. Marcus sent postcards from Quantico during his FBI training. Bobby wrote letters about his struggles as one of only 2 black officers in the Millfield Police Department. When Marcus investigated civil rights violations across the South, Bobby fed him information about suspicious cases that needed federal attention. 20 years after leaving Millfield, Marcus returned for Bobby's ceremony when he made history as the town's first black police chief. Robert Jackson had spent 10 years transforming the department, implementing strict body camera policies, cultural sensitivity training, and a civilian review board. He'd fired 7 officers for misconduct and rebuilt community trust through transparency and accountability. Now handcuffed on the floor of Westfield Grocery, Marcus Reynolds made a decision. He caught the eye of a young woman who hadn't joined the chorus of racist comments from some onlookers. "Miss," he called out, his voice steady and dignified despite his position. "Would you please call Police Chief Robert Jackson? Tell him Marcus Reynolds needs him at Westfield Grocery immediately." Travis snorted derisively. "Yeah, call the chief. I'm sure he'll drop everything because some random guy claims to know him." But the young woman nodded, stepping away to make the call. Travis shifted nervously as more people gathered. The crowd had grown to nearly 30 shoppers with opinions clearly divided. Some muttered about police harassment, while others loudly proclaimed that Travis was just doing his job. Marcus remained silent, conserving his energy and watching Travis grow increasingly uncomfortable under the scrutiny of so many phone cameras. 2 patrol cars arrived with lights flashing, and a pair of rookie officers hurried into the store. Officer Diaz and Officer Chen looked barely out of the academy, their uniforms still stiff with newness. "What's the situation?" Diaz asked, taking in the scene with obvious confusion. Travis pulled them aside, speaking rapidly. Suspicious male refused to identify himself, made threatening movements, and claimed to be FBI. I've got him secured, but he might have accomplices. Marcus watched the rookies' faces as they processed this obvious fabrication. Officer Chen glanced at him with uncertainty, noting his calm demeanor and professional appearance. "Sir, do you have identification?" she asked, approaching cautiously. "Left inside jacket pocket." Marcus replied evenly. "I'm Special Agent Marcus Reynolds, FBI Domestic Terrorism Task Force, Civil Rights Division." Travis stepped forward. "Hey, I already checked him for weapons. There's nothing there." But Officer Chen had already reached carefully into Marcus's jacket, withdrawing a leather credential wallet. She flipped it open, eyes widening at the gold FBI shield and identification card. She showed it silently to Officer Diaz, whose expression shifted from skepticism to alarm. "Wilson," Diaz said quietly, "we need to talk. Now." Before they could confer further, the unmistakable sound of a police siren cut through the murmuring crowd. A cruiser with chief's insignia pulled into the parking lot, lights flashing, but siren stopping abruptly. Travis's face paled as he recognized the vehicle. "Who called the chief?" he demanded, looking accusingly at the rookies. "I did," said the young woman, who had stepped away earlier. "And I told him exactly what's happening here." The automatic doors slid open, and Police Chief Robert Jackson strode in, his imposing 6'3" frame, filling the entrance. His eyes scanned the scene quickly professionally before locking onto Marcus's face. For a brief moment, beneath the professional mask, recognition flashed between 2 old friends who had once promised to change the world together. Chief Robert Jackson moved through the parting crowd with the quiet authority of a man who commanded respect, not through intimidation, but through integrity earned over decades of service. At 56, his close-cropped hair had gone silver at the temples, adding gravitas to his already commanding presence. Several shoppers whispered in surprise, unaccustomed to seeing a black police chief in a town where racial progress often seemed to move at a glacial pace. Travis Wilson straightened his posture, but couldn't hide the flicker of uncertainty that crossed his face. "Chief," he began, voice higher than normal. "I was responding to a suspicious person call when this individual became combative, and—" Robert held up one hand, silencing Travis mid-sentence. He knelt beside Marcus, meeting his old friend's eyes. "Special Agent Reynolds," he said formally, though his voice carried a warmth that belied the professional address. Seems you're having some trouble grocery shopping in my town. Marcus maintained his dignity, despite the handcuffs and uncomfortable position. Just a misunderstanding, Chief Jackson. Officer Wilson here seems unconvinced of my credentials. Robert stood turning to Travis with an expression that had frozen many a subordinate in place. Remove those handcuffs, officer, immediately. Travis didn't move. Sir, with all due respect, this suspect was... That wasn't a suggestion, Wilson. It was an order. Robert's voice remained level, but carried an unmistakable steel. Unless you'd like to explain to the FBI field office why you've detained a senior federal agent without cause. Travis hesitated, a muscle working in his jaw as he visibly struggled with taking orders from a black superior. The watching crowd had gone completely silent, phones still recording what had transformed from a routine arrest into something far more dramatic. After what seemed an eternity, but was merely seconds, Travis reluctantly produced the handcuff key and unlocked the restraints. Marcus rose smoothly to his feet, straightening his suit jacket with the dignity of a man accustomed to maintaining composure under extreme circumstances. Thank you, Chief Jackson, he said, rubbing his wrists where the cuffs had left angry red marks. Robert took Marcus's FBI credentials from Officer Chen, examining them briefly before returning them with a respectful nod. Please accept my apologies for this incident, Special Agent Reynolds. His formal tone couldn't quite mask the personal concern underneath. The two men shared a brief look that contained 35 years of friendship, the weight of shared childhood memories, and mutual understanding of what it meant to be black men in positions of authority. Would you mind if I reviewed what happened here? Robert asked, turning to the bystanders. Several people immediately stepped forward, offering their phone recordings. Alicia Chen, the store manager, approached with her own device. I have the security camera footage as well, Chief Jackson. It covers the entire incident from when Officer Wilson entered the store. Robert thanked her, then gestured to Officers Diaz and Chen. Please collect witness statements and all available video evidence. As the rookies moved through the crowd, Robert pulled Travis aside, their conversation just quiet enough that onlookers couldn't hear the specific words. But Robert's expression left no doubt about the seriousness of the discussion. Several uniformed officers who had arrived as backup stood awkwardly nearby, exchanging glances as their chief confronted one of their own. Officer Michaels, a 20-year veteran, leaned toward his partner. Wilson's done it this time. That's the third complaint this month, and now he's messed with the FBI. The chief's been looking for a reason to cut him loose since that incident with the Thompson family last summer. His partner nodded. Yeah, and he turned his body cam off again. Jackson implemented that policy himself. He's gonna be furious. Travis's face flushed deep red as Robert continued speaking, his finger occasionally jabbing toward Marcus or the watching crowd. When Robert finished, he turned away, but Travis wasn't done. He muttered something under his breath, thinking his chief out of earshot. But Robert stopped mid-stride, his back stiffening. He turned slowly, his expression now dangerously calm. What was that, Officer Wilson? Travis swallowed hard, realizing his mistake. Nothing, sir. No, please repeat what you just said. I want to make sure everyone heard you. Travis remained silent, eyes darting to the watching crowd, many still recording. I thought so, Robert said, his voice carrying clearly through the now silent store. Officer Wilson, your body camera is conveniently deactivated. You've detained a federal officer without cause. You've ignored multiple witnesses attesting to your misconduct, and now you've used racially offensive language about both myself and Special Agent Reynolds. He extended his hand. Your service weapon and badge, please. Travis took an involuntary step backward. Chief, you can't. I absolutely can. You're suspended pending full investigation, effective immediately. Your weapon and badge, Officer Wilson, now. The store had gone completely silent. Even the overhead music seemed to have paused for this moment of reckoning. With trembling fingers and fury in his eyes, Travis unholstered his weapon, carefully removing the magazine before placing it in his chief's outstretched hand. Then, with visible reluctance, he unpinned his badge from his uniform. Robert accepted both items with formal professionalism. "Officer Diaz will escort you to the station to complete the necessary paperwork. You'll be contacted regarding the disciplinary hearing." As Travis was led away, the tension in the store broke. Several shoppers applauded spontaneously, while others merely watched in stunned silence. Robert turned to Marcus, dropping the formal facade. "It's been too long, old friend, though I wish our reunion had happened under different circumstances." By midnight, video of the confrontation at Westfield Grocery had been viewed over 2 million times across multiple social media platforms. Hashtags like #grocery store profiling and #badge of injustice trended nationally, with celebrities and politicians weighing in on the incident. The local Millfield Herald's website crashed from unprecedented traffic after they published the store's security footage showing the entire encounter from multiple angles. CNN, MSNBC, and Fox News all led their morning broadcasts with different framings of the same event. "An FBI agent racially profiled while shopping," announced one network. "Police officer suspended for doing his job," countered another. Marcus Reynolds awoke in his childhood bedroom, now converted to a guest room, in Robert Jackson's comfortable Victorian home on Elm Street. He'd declined to stay in a hotel, preferring the security and privacy of his old friend's residence, as reporters began gathering outside his temporary FBI office in Millfield. He scrolled through dozens of missed calls and messages on his secure phone, including 3 from the FBI director himself and 1 from the Attorney General. His daughter Amara had sent 17 increasingly panicked texts after seeing her father's face on national news, only calming down after they'd spoken for an hour the previous night. Marcus wasn't used to being the story. For 30 years, he'd worked behind the scenes building cases against hate groups, corrupt officials, and civil rights violators. Now his face appeared on every news channel, his personnel file scrutinized by pundits who alternately portrayed him as an American hero or suggested he must have done something to provoke Officer Wilson's response. Downstairs, he found Robert at the kitchen table, still in his bathrobe, reviewing documents, while his wife Diana prepared breakfast. "Morning, Marcus," she greeted him warmly. "Coffee's fresh." "How many eggs?" As Marcus settled at the table, Robert pushed a tablet toward him, displaying the official incident report. "Travis Wilson has a longer history of complaints than I realized," he said grimly. "Internal affairs under the previous administration buried most of them. 3 excessive force complaints involving black suspects in the past year alone, all dismissed without proper investigation." Marcus nodded, unsurprised, but still disturbed. "You've got a systemic problem, Bobby." "I know. I've been cleaning house since I took over, but some rot goes deeper than I realized." He rubbed his eyes wearily. "The mayor's office has called 4 times this morning. They're worried about lawsuits, department reputation, tourism impact." Diana placed plates of eggs and toast before both men. "The mayor should be worried about justice, not public relations," she said firmly. "If Robert hadn't arrived when he did—" She didn't finish the thought. They all knew how differently yesterday's incident might have ended. Marcus's secure phone rang with a DC area code. "Reynolds," he answered, listening intently to his superior at the bureau. "Yes, sir. I understand. Yes, I can be available for that." He ended the call with a sigh. "FBI Internal Affairs is sending a team. Standard procedure when an agent is involved in a police incident. They're also launching their own investigation into potential civil rights violations by Officer Wilson and possibly others in the department." Robert nodded solemnly. "I'll cooperate fully. This department needs cleaning out, and if it takes federal oversight to do it, so be it. After breakfast, Marcus and Robert met privately in Robert's home office, a space lined with photographs chronicling Robert's rise through police ranks alongside family portraits and community awards. "We need to talk strategy," Robert said, closing the door. "This isn't just about one bad officer. I've suspected for years that there's a faction within the department working against my reforms protecting officers like Wilson, targeting certain neighborhoods for excessive enforcement." Marcus leaned forward, his professional interest piqued. "You think Wilson has protection inside the department?" "And possibly at City Hall. The previous chief, William Mercer, still has considerable influence. Several city council members were vocal opponents when I implemented the body camera program and civilian review board." Marcus considered this information. "My current assignment involves investigating a pattern of hate crimes against black-owned businesses across Northern Virginia. 3 arson cases, numerous vandalism incidents, all with similar racial slurs left at the scenes." Robert's eyes widened slightly. "We've had 2 suspicious fires at black-owned businesses in Millfield in the past 6 months. Both ruled accidental by our fire investigator." "Who appointed that investigator?" "Mercer, before he retired." The 2 men exchanged knowing glances, decades of friendship, allowing them to communicate volumes without words. "I'll need to extend my stay in Millfield," Marcus said finally. "I'll tell the Bureau I'm following a lead connecting my current case to local incidents. You can use my guest room as long as needed." Robert hesitated. "But Marcus, be careful. If what we suspect is true, you've just put yourself in the crosshairs of some dangerous people." Later that afternoon, as news vans lined the street outside the Millfield police station, Marcus and Robert emerged to give a brief statement. Reporters shouted questions from behind hastily erected barriers. "Chief Jackson, will Officer Wilson be permanently removed from duty?" "Agent Reynolds, do you plan to sue the department? Is this incident being investigated as a hate crime?" Robert raised his hands for quiet. "The Millfield Police Department is conducting a thorough investigation into yesterday's incident. Officer Wilson has been suspended pending the outcome of that investigation and a formal disciplinary hearing. We are cooperating fully with the FBI, which has opened its own inquiry." He turned to Marcus, who stepped forward with the practiced composure of a veteran federal agent. "I came to Millfield as part of an ongoing FBI investigation into civil rights violations. Yesterday's incident, while unfortunate, will not deter me from that mission. I have full confidence in Chief Jackson's commitment to ensuring justice and accountability within his department." As they fielded a few carefully selected questions, neither man mentioned their growing suspicion that what had happened at Westfield Grocery might be connected to something far more sinister within Millfield's power structure. Across town, Travis Wilson sat in the darkened living room of his apartment watching the press conference on television, while scrolling through messages of support from sympathetic colleagues and right-wing police advocacy groups. His phone rang with a number he recognized. "Hello?" he answered cautiously. "Wilson, it's Mercer. Keep your mouth shut and lay low. We're working on damage control. Remember, you've got friends in this town who understand you were just doing your job." Travis leaned back, a small smile forming. "Yes, sir. I appreciate the support." After hanging up, he opened his laptop and logged into a private forum where several usernames he recognized as fellow officers were already discussing strategies to discredit both Jackson and Reynolds. "This isn't over," he muttered to himself, typing a message to the group. "Not by a long shot. What would you do if you discovered corruption within the very system meant to protect you?" Comment number 1. If you believe exposing the truth is worth the risk, even when powerful people want to silence you. Like this video if you think friendship can be a powerful weapon against injustice. Subscribe to follow more stories where ordinary people stand up against extraordinary odds. Now, just how deep does this conspiracy go, and who else might be involved? Marcus Reynolds sat in his temporary office at the Millfield FBI satellite location, reviewing personnel files Chief Jackson had provided on officers with connections to Travis Wilson. He'd officially requested a 2-week extension on his hate crimes investigation, citing potential links to Millfield cases. His superiors, already concerned about the public relations implications of having an agent racially profiled, readily approved. The wall behind him displayed photographs of 6 businesses targeted in apparent hate crimes across Northern Virginia, including 2 in Millfield that local authorities had dismissed as accidental fires. Red string connected similar elements: timing methods, spray-painted slurs, lack of forced entry. Something about the pattern nagged at him, suggesting inside knowledge or possibly official involvement. His phone buzzed with a text from Robert. Alicia Chen receiving threats. Store security cameras show police cruiser driving by her house repeatedly last night. Marcus frowned. The store manager had been one of the few people willing to intervene during his confrontation with Travis Wilson. Now she was being intimidated for speaking out. He added her name to his whiteboard under Witnesses Requiring Protection. His concentration was broken by a knock at the door. "Come in," he called reflexively, checking that his service weapon was within reach. The door opened to reveal Amara Reynolds, her expression a mixture of concern and determination. At 22, she strongly resembled her mother, with the same analytical mind that had made Marcus fall in love with Elaine decades earlier. "Dad," she said, dropping her backpack and embracing him tightly. "I caught the first flight I could get." Marcus returned the hug, surprised but relieved to see his daughter. "Amara, you should be in class. Your finals are next week." She pulled back, fixing him with a look that brooked no argument. "My father was held at gunpoint by a racist cop. I think my professors will understand." She gestured to the caseboard. "Besides, I've helped you organize case files since I was 12. You need me." Marcus couldn't argue with that logic. Amara had grown up watching him build cases, developing an instinctive understanding of investigation techniques that had only sharpened during her pre-law studies. "All right," he conceded. "But you stay away from anything dangerous, understood? You're here as my administrative assistant, nothing more." Amara rolled her eyes, but agreed immediately, turning her attention to the files scattered across his desk. "So what's the connection between these hate crimes and Officer Wilson?" While Marcus brought his daughter up to speed across town, Robert Jackson faced a crisis of his own. The brick had crashed through his kitchen window at 3 a.m., narrowly missing Diana as she made her way to the bathroom. Attached was a note with 2 words: "Race traitor." Now, as crime scene technicians photographed the evidence, Robert received a call from Deputy Chief Martinez. "Chief, someone accessed the personnel files server last night. All disciplinary records for Officer Wilson have been deleted from the system." Robert's blood ran cold. "What about backups?" "Also wiped. Whoever did this knew our network architecture." Robert thanked her and ended the call, turning to the officer supervising the crime scene. "Patterson, I want a detail on my house round the clock, but keep it quiet. Use only officers you personally trust." Officer Patterson nodded gravely. "Yes, sir. And Chief, a lot of us support what you're doing. Not everyone's on Wilson's side." By midday, Marcus and Robert met at a diner 10 miles outside Millfield to compare notes, bringing Amara along. The vintage roadside restaurant with vinyl booths and a jukebox provided both anonymity and limited entry points that Marcus could monitor. "Someone's trying to erase Wilson's record," Robert explained after they ordered. "They're also sending clear messages to witnesses. Alicia Chen isn't the only one. 2 other shoppers who provided statements have reported suspicious vehicles outside their homes." Marcus nodded grimly. "This goes beyond one officer with racial bias. Someone's protecting Wilson, which means he's connected to something bigger." Amara, who had been quietly listening while reviewing case notes, suddenly looked up. Dad, did you notice that all the hate crime targets were either potential witnesses in previous misconduct cases or had filed complaints against Millfield officers? Marcus and Robert both turned to her with surprised expressions. What? She said defensively. I cross-referenced the business owners with the complaint records Chief Jackson sent over. Every single one had some interaction with the police department that went nowhere under the previous administration. Marcus quickly verified her observation, pride momentarily overriding his concern. She's right. This could be systematic intimidation or retaliation against civilians who challenged police authority. Robert's phone buzzed with a text message. His expression darkened as he read it. The mayor's called an emergency closed session of the city council for tonight. My sources say they're discussing whether to place me on administrative leave pending review of my handling of department personnel matters. Marcus understood the implications immediately. They're moving to regain control of the investigation. If they remove you, who takes over as acting chief? Deputy Chief Martinez normally. But she's on vacation this week, which means it would default to Captain Riggs. Riggs, Marcus repeated. Former partner to ex-Chief Mercer. Robert nodded grimly. And godfather to Travis Wilson. The pieces were falling into place, revealing a picture more disturbing than any of them had anticipated. That evening, as Robert prepared for the council meeting, Marcus and Amara worked late at the satellite office compiling evidence of what increasingly appeared to be a coordinated effort to cover up police misconduct and possibly direct involvement in hate crimes. Amara had connected with a courthouse clerk she'd befriended during her summer internship, who provided access to sealed records showing financial connections between former Chief Mercer Mayor Thompson and several business entities that had benefited from city contracts. As Marcus added these new connections to his caseboard, the lights in the small office suddenly went out. Power outage? Amara asked, reaching for her phone's flashlight. Marcus's hand went instinctively to his weapon. Stay down, he ordered quietly, moving to the window. Outside, he could see other buildings still had electricity. This outage was isolated to their building. The sound of glass breaking came from the rear entrance. Marcus drew his service weapon, positioning himself between the door and his daughter. Call Robert, he whispered. Tell him we need backup at the satellite office. Then call 911. As Amara made the calls, Marcus heard multiple footsteps in the darkened hallway. This was no random break-in. Someone had deliberately cut power to the building and knew exactly where to find them. Marcus calculated his options, knowing that whoever was coming had likely planned for an armed FBI agent. But he doubted they'd expected Amara to be present, which might give him a tactical advantage. When I engage them, he whispered to his daughter, slip out through the side door and run for the car. Drive straight to Robert's house. Do not stop for anyone. Before Amara could protest, the office door burst open and two masked figures rushed in with tactical flashlights and weapons drawn. FBI, drop your weapons, Marcus shouted, taking cover behind a filing cabinet. Instead of complying, the intruders opened fire. The first bullet embedded itself in the filing cabinet inches from Marcus's head, sending metal splinters flying. With practiced precision, he returned fire, forcing the attackers to seek cover. Go now! He shouted to Amara, who darted toward the side exit as instructed. One intruder swung his weapon toward the movement, but Marcus's well-placed shot caught him in the shoulder, spinning him backward with a howl of pain. The second attacker unleashed a barrage of bullets, forcing Marcus to duck behind a desk as office equipment shattered around him. Years of field experience took over as he calculated angles, distances, and the diminishing ammunition in his standard-issue Glock. He heard the distinctive sound of a magazine being ejected, giving him a split-second advantage. Rising from cover, he fired twice, catching the second attacker in the leg. Both men retreated, dragging themselves down the hallway and out the rear exit. By the time police sirens wailed in the distance, they had disappeared into a waiting vehicle. Marcus secured the area, then called Amara. "I'm fine," she assured him, her voice remarkably steady. "I'm with Diana at your house. Chief Jackson's on his way to you with officers he trusts." The attack marked a dangerous escalation. What had begun as racial profiling at a grocery store had exposed a network of corruption reaching into the highest levels of Millfield's government and police force. Within hours, the FBI had dispatched a tactical team to secure the satellite office and protect Marcus. Director Collins himself called to check on one of the Bureau's most respected agents. "Reynolds, I'm assigning Assistant Director Levinson and a full investigative team. We're treating this as an attack on the federal government." By morning, Millfield found itself at the center of a national story with a new dimension. "FBI agent targeted after exposing police corruption," read the headlines. While Marcus worked with the arriving federal team, Travis Wilson launched his counteroffensive from paid administrative leave. He appeared on American Morning, a conservative news program portraying himself as a victim of political correctness. "I was just doing my job responding to a suspicious person call," he insisted, dressed in a crisp button-down rather than his uniform. "I had no way of knowing he was FBI." When someone reaches into their jacket after acting confrontational, I have to protect myself and the public. The sympathetic host nodded. "And now Chief Jackson, who has a personal relationship with this agent, has suspended you without due process." Travis adopted an expression of wounded innocence. "It seems like my career is being sacrificed to appease political pressure. I became a police officer to protect and serve everyone regardless of race." The interview sparked outrage across social media, with police unions from other jurisdictions releasing statements supporting Wilson and condemning what they called a rush to judgment. Robert Jackson arrived at his office to find protesters from both sides gathered outside police headquarters. Signs reading "Stand with Wilson" competed with others demanding justice for Reynolds. Inside the department had fractured along similar lines. Some officers wore small blue pins, a silent symbol of solidarity with Travis Wilson. Others made a point of expressing support for their chief's actions. As Robert settled behind his desk, his secretary delivered troubling news. "Sir Mayor Thompson has called an emergency press conference for noon. The rumors say he's going to announce an independent investigation into your handling of the Wilson suspension." Before Robert could respond, his computer pinged with an urgent email. Someone had anonymously sent him a file containing what appeared to be forged performance reviews and altered incident reports designed to damage Marcus's credibility. The documents had already been leaked to several news outlets. Meanwhile, Marcus's daughter Amara had returned to the secured FBI command post established at a federal building outside Millfield. Despite her father's concerns, she refused to return to Washington. "I'm staying," she insisted. "Besides, I made contact with someone who might help us." That someone was Jessica Moore, a dispatcher at the Millfield Police Department, who had dated Travis Wilson briefly before ending the relationship after witnessing his volatile temper. While romantic involvement had clouded her judgment, initially Jessica had grown increasingly troubled by Travis's racist comments and the support he received from certain officers, despite documented misconduct. "He bragged about having protection from the top," Jessica told Amara during their clandestine meeting at a coffee shop. "Said Chief Jackson was on borrowed time because the old guard wouldn't tolerate a black man running things for long." Jessica nervously slid a USB drive across the table. "This is from the dispatch system. It shows patrol patterns for the past 6 months. Notice how certain officers, including Travis, were consistently assigned to the predominantly black East Side, despite numerous complaints." Amara thanked her, recognizing the risk Jessica took by providing this information. "Why are you doing this?" Jessica stared into her coffee. "My brother's black. Different fathers. I've watched how differently people treat us our whole lives. When I heard Travis talk about cleaning up certain neighborhoods, I knew exactly what he meant." As threats mounted against witnesses and evidence, Marcus's FBI colleagues arrived in force. Special Agent Valencia Torres, a digital forensics specialist, established secure communications. Special Agent Derek Wong began interviewing witnesses under federal protection. The technical team discovered sophisticated deletion attempts on the police department's servers, but backups preserved critical evidence of tampering. At the Millfield Municipal Building, Travis Wilson entered through a side door for his scheduled internal affairs interview. Unknown to him, FBI agents had installed surveillance equipment with Robert's authorization. As Travis waited alone in the interview room, he made a critical mistake. Believing himself unobserved, he used his phone to access and delete incriminating messages. The FBI team captured every keystroke documenting his destruction of evidence in real time. That evening, as tensions in Millfield reached a breaking point, a local radio station broadcast an explosive recording. The audio, apparently captured during a private gathering of officers, featured Travis Wilson and several colleagues discussing targeting black residents for minor infractions. "Keep the pressure on that neighborhood," an identified voice instructed. "Make them understand this is still our town, no matter who's sitting in the chief's office." The recording included racial slurs and explicit discussions of fabricating probable cause for traffic stops and searches. Public reaction was swift and furious. Mayor Thompson, previously supportive of Wilson, issued a carefully worded statement distancing himself from any discriminatory police practices. Former Chief Mercer canceled scheduled media appearances. Robert Jackson, recognizing the pivotal moment, called an emergency town hall meeting for the following evening. "It's time for this community to face its truth," he told Marcus as they prepared their strategy. "We've built enough evidence to expose not just Wilson, but the entire corrupt system." Marcus nodded in agreement. "The Bureau is ready to present our findings, including the financial connections between Mercer the mayor and those city contracts." Amara, who had been reviewing documents with Jessica's help, looked up from her laptop. "And I've found the connection between the hate crimes and the department. 3 officers, including Wilson, were moonlighting as security for businesses that later received city contracts after black-owned competitors were vandalized or burned." As they prepared for the public confrontation that would shake Millfield to its core, Marcus received a warning from an FBI surveillance team. "Wilson and several officers just entered the Bluebird bar. They're meeting with Mercer and someone from the mayor's office. Looks like they're planning something for tomorrow's town hall." Robert checked his secure phone, reviewing security arrangements. "Let them plan. For the first time, we're one step ahead of them." The night before the town hall, as Millfield held its collective breath, Marcus stood at Robert's kitchen window, looking out at the quiet street. "Remember when we used to think changing the world would be simple?" he asked his oldest friend. Robert joined him, 2 cups of coffee in hand. "Nothing worth doing is ever simple." He passed a cup to Marcus. "But we're still here, still fighting. That counts for something." Marcus accepted the coffee with a tired smile. "Tomorrow we finish what began in that grocery store." What neither man could predict was exactly how explosive the town hall would become, or how dramatically it would transform not just their lives, but the future of Millfield itself. The Millfield Community Center hummed with tension as hundreds of residents filed in, filling every seat and lining the walls. News vans from national networks crowded the parking lot satellite dishes, raised to broadcast the proceedings live across the country. Armed FBI agents and state police officers maintained a visible security presence, their faces impassive as they scanned the crowd for potential threats. At the front of the room, a long table had been set up with microphones for Chief Robert Jackson, FBI Special Agent Marcus Reynolds, State Attorney General Catherine Pearson, and County Prosecutor Michael Dawson. To the side sat Travis Wilson, with his attorney, a high-priced lawyer from Richmond who specialized in defending police officers accused of misconduct. Former Chief William Mercer occupied a front row seat surrounded by supporters wearing small blue pins. Mayor Thompson had initially claimed a scheduling conflict, but changed his mind when informed his absence would be noted in the federal investigation report. The atmosphere crackled with anticipation as Robert Jackson approached the microphone at exactly 7 p.m. The room fell silent. "Thank you all for coming," he began, his deep voice carrying clearly through the packed hall. "What happened to Special Agent Reynolds at Westfield Grocery last week has forced our community to confront uncomfortable truths about policing in Millfield. Tonight is about transparency, accountability, and justice." He outlined the evening's agenda presentation of evidence testimony from affected community members and announcements regarding next steps. Travis Wilson's attorney immediately objected. "My client is entitled to due process through proper channels, not a public lynching disguised as a town hall." The racially charged term sent murmurs through the crowd. Robert remained unflappable. "Counselor, this is not a trial. Your client will have ample opportunity to address the evidence presented. But the people of Millfield deserve to know what's been happening in their police department." Marcus Reynolds stepped forward next, his presence commanding immediate respect. The professional FBI agent was a stark contrast to the man Millfield had seen handcuffed on a grocery store floor days earlier. "My team has conducted a thorough investigation into not only the incident involving Officer Wilson, but a pattern of potentially criminal behavior within the Millfield Police Department spanning several years." With methodical precision, Marcus presented evidence from department records, witness statements, and financial documents. A large screen displayed timeline charts connecting incidents of police misconduct with specific officers, all protected by the previous administration. "Our analysis shows that between 2020 and 2024 complaints filed by Black residents were 87% more likely to be dismissed without investigation compared to those filed by white residents." The evidence grew more damning as Marcus revealed financial connections between former Chief Mercer Mayor Thompson and developers who benefited from properties that changed hands after Black-owned businesses were targeted in apparent hate crimes. In each case, officers connected to Travis Wilson's social circle were the first responders who ruled these incidents as accidents or random vandalism, despite clear evidence suggesting otherwise. Former Chief Mercer shifted uncomfortably in his seat as bank records appeared on screen showing suspicious deposits coinciding with key property transactions. Mayor Thompson stared straight ahead, his face a rigid mask. As the presentation continued, Travis Wilson's confident smirk gradually faded. His attorney scribbled notes frantically, occasionally whispering in his client's ear. Following the FBI presentation, Robert returned to the microphone. "We've also discovered evidence of systematic targeting of Black neighborhoods for excessive enforcement of minor infractions." He played the damning audio recording that had surfaced the previous day, now enhanced by FBI audio technicians to clearly identify each speaker. Travis Wilson's voice was unmistakable as he discussed, keeping those people in line. The recording ended with former Chief Mercer instructing officers to disable body cameras during certain encounters. A stunned silence fell over the room, broken only when an elderly Black woman stood up from her seat. "That's the same voice," she said clearly. "The officer who tore my car apart looking for drugs when I was driving home from church. When I filed a complaint, they said there was no record of the stop." Her statement opened the floodgates. One by one, residents came forward to share experiences of harassment, intimidation, and discrimination at the hands of Millfield police officers. A Black business owner described repeated code violations that mysteriously appeared after he refused to sell his property to a developer connected to Mayor Thompson. A high school teacher recounted how her honors students were routinely stopped and searched while walking home from study sessions. each testimony built upon the previous one, creating a devastating portrait of systematic abuse of power. Attorney General Pearson approached the microphone next. Based on the evidence presented by the FBI and testimony from community members, my office is launching a formal investigation into civil rights violations by the Millfield Police Department. This investigation will examine potential criminal charges against specific officers and civilian officials involved in these incidents. Travis Wilson's attorney jumped to his feet. "This is outrageous. My client is being railroaded without due process." Robert remained composed. "Your client turned off his body camera before confronting a federal agent without cause, then fabricated details in his official report. Those actions alone warrant termination under department policies I implemented 3 years ago, policies that Officer Wilson acknowledged and signed." The attorney continued objecting as Travis suddenly stood up, his face contorted with anger. "This is all because of him," he shouted, pointing at Marcus. "You're all taking his word because he has some fancy badge and knows the chief I was protecting this community." "From what, Officer Wilson?" Marcus asked calmly. "From a man buying groceries, or from the reality that black professionals like Chief Jackson and myself have earned positions of authority through decades of dedicated service?" Travis's response was a racial slur that gasped through the room, captured clearly by every microphone and camera. His attorney closed his eyes in defeat. At that moment, the community center doors burst open as 3 officers in tactical gear entered, moving quickly toward the exit nearest to Travis. Robert recognized them immediately as Wilson's closest allies in the department. "Stop those officers," he commanded. State police moved to intercept them, but not before one passed something to Travis, who attempted to conceal it in his jacket. FBI agent Torres intercepted Travis before he could reach the exit, discovering a thumb drive containing department files he had no authorization to possess. "Add evidence tampering and obstruction of justice to the list," Attorney General Pearson noted calmly. As state police escorted the 4 officers from the building, Robert Jackson stood and addressed the silent room. "Tonight marks a turning point for Millfield. The badge we wear represents a sacred trust with the community we serve. Officer Travis Wilson has broken that trust repeatedly." He walked deliberately to where Travis stood between 2 state troopers. "Travis Wilson, you are hereby terminated from the Millfield Police Department effective immediately." With ceremonial formality, Robert unpinned the badge from Travis's chest, the metallic sound audible in the completely silent room. "Your actions have dishonored this badge and everything it stands for." The community center erupted in applause as Travis was led away, his face a mask of hatred and defeat. When order was restored, Marcus took the microphone one final time. "What happened to me at Westfield Grocery was not unique. The difference was that I had the resources and position to fight back. Many victims of racial profiling and police misconduct do not. Tonight is not about revenge, but about restoration of justice and trust." He looked directly at the cameras broadcasting nationwide. Let Millfield become an example of how a community can confront its darkest truths and emerge stronger, more just, and truly committed to equal protection under the law for all its citizens. As the town hall concluded, Robert and Marcus stood side by side, 2 childhood friends who had fulfilled their promise to change the world, beginning with their hometown. The road ahead would be challenging, but for the first time in generations, the people of Millfield allowed themselves to hope for genuine transformation. 3 months after the town hall that shook Millfield to its foundations, Marcus Reynolds stood before a newly graduated class of police cadets. Their eager faces turned toward him with rapt attention. "The badge you receive today is not a shield from accountability," he told them, his voice carrying through the community center that had hosted such dramatic revelations just 12 weeks earlier. "It is a symbol of the sacred trust between you and every citizen you encounter, regardless of their race, background, or circumstance. The transformation of Millfield had been swift and comprehensive. Travis Wilson and 4 other officers now faced federal charges for civil rights violations, evidence tampering, and conspiracy. Former Chief Mercer had been indicted for corruption and obstruction of justice. Mayor Thompson, implicated in the property scheme connected to the hate crimes, had resigned in disgrace, replaced by Alicia Chen, the grocery store manager whose courage had helped spark the entire reckoning. The Millfield Police Department, under Robert Jackson's continued leadership, had become an unexpected model for reform. With guidance from Marcus and the FBI, Robert had implemented a comprehensive overhaul new training protocols, focusing on de-escalation and implicit bias recognition. A strengthened civilian oversight committee, with actual disciplinary authority and recruitment efforts, that had already increased diversity within the department by 30%. National police reform advocates pointed to what they now called the Millfield model, as evidence that meaningful change was possible even in communities with deeply entrenched racial tensions. Marcus had extended his stay in Millfield far beyond his original investigation, taking a temporary assignment with the FBI's Community Relations Division to help implement the reforms. His suburban Virginia home stood empty while he stayed in Robert's guest room. The two friends, often working late into the night, picking up conversations started 3 decades earlier about justice and equality. After the ceremony, Marcus met Amara for lunch at Westfield Grocery's newly opened cafe section, a symbolic reclaiming of the space where he had faced Travis Wilson's gun. "Dad, I got my law school acceptance letters," she announced, sliding 3 envelopes across the table. Harvard, Columbia, and Georgetown had all offered spots to the brilliant young woman whose work had been crucial to unraveling the Millfield conspiracy. "That's wonderful, sweetheart." Marcus beamed with paternal pride. "Your mother would be so proud." Amara took a sip of her coffee. "I've been thinking about specializing in civil rights law. Professor Williams says I could clerk for a federal judge after graduation, maybe even work for the Justice Department someday." Marcus nodded, recognizing how profoundly the events of the past months had shaped his daughter's direction. "You'd make an excellent civil rights attorney. You've certainly had a unique education these past few months." "I also got another offer," she added, sliding a 4th envelope across the table. Inside was a letter from Robert Jackson, formally inviting Amara to join Millfield's newly formed Police Oversight Committee as a student representative during her law school breaks. "Chief Jackson says I have a valuable perspective, as both a young black woman and someone familiar with proper police procedure." Marcus smiled at his daughter's enthusiasm. Across town, Robert Jackson stood in his office taking down his service commendations to make room for a new frame. The governor had personally presented him with the State Medal of Valor for his courage in confronting corruption within his own department, but this new addition meant more. It was a simple photograph from 1975, 2 boys on bicycles, one black and one white, grinning at the camera, with the innocent belief that they could change the world. Beside it, he placed a recent newspaper clipping showing the same 2 friends, now in their 50s, standing together at the police academy graduation. A knock at his door interrupted his nostalgia. Deputy Chief Martinez entered with a tablet displaying crime statistics. "Complaints are down 60% since the reforms, Chief, and our recruitment class has the highest qualification scores in department history." Robert nodded with satisfaction. "And the community survey results. 82% of residents say their trust in the department has improved. That's across all neighborhoods, all demographics." The changes extended beyond the police department. The city council, with several new members elected in a special recall vote, had established a reparations committee to address historical inequities in housing and business opportunities. The school board was revising curriculum to include accurate teaching of local civil rights history, including the recent events that had brought national attention to Millfield. Even the physical landscape was changing. The vacant lots where black-owned businesses had been burned in apparent hate crimes now featured construction sites for new enterprises financed through a special community development fund established with penalties from the corruption settlements. As evening approached, Marcus made his way to Robert's house for their weekly dinner tradition. Diana had invited several new officers and their families, part of her husband's effort to build a departmental culture that extended beyond uniforms and badges into genuine community. On Robert's front porch, 2 rocking chairs held a commanding view of Maple Street. The friends settled into them with glasses of lemonade, watching as a patrol car drove past. The young officers inside, one black and one Latina, both newly graduated from the academy. Marcus had addressed that morning, slowed their vehicle, and offered respectful salutes to the chief and the FBI agent who had changed the course of their community. "Think we made a difference, Bobby?" Marcus asked, using the childhood nickname few were privileged to use anymore. Robert gazed thoughtfully at the transformed street where they had once raced bicycles. "We kept our promise. Not perfectly, not completely, but we moved things forward." He raised his glass in a silent toast to their shared journey. "The work continues, though, always does." Marcus nodded in agreement. "The next generation seems up to the challenge," he said, thinking of Amara and the eager faces of the new cadets. As twilight settled over Millfield, the 2 friends continued their conversation, just as they had as boys, just as they would continue to do in the years ahead. The badge that Robert had stripped from Travis Wilson's chest now resided in a glass case in the police academy lobby, a permanent reminder of the cost of betraying public trust, and the possibility of redemption and renewal, even in places where injustice had seemed insurmountable. What's your reaction to this story? Would you have had the courage to stand up against corruption in your community, like Marcus and Robert did? Comment below with your thoughts on how racial profiling impacts trust in law enforcement. If you believe that friendship and integrity can overcome decades of injustice, give this video a like. Subscribe to our channel for more powerful stories about ordinary people fighting extraordinary battles against discrimination and corruption. Share this video with someone who needs to understand the real impact of racial bias in our systems. Thank you for joining us today. And remember, true justice requires both courage and accountability. This powerful story illuminates several profound truths about justice and society. First, systemic racism often hides in plain sight, protected by those who benefit from the status quo. Second, true change requires both insiders and outsiders working together. Robert's position within the system, combined with Marcus's federal authority, created the leverage needed for transformation. Third, courage is contagious. When Marcus and Robert stood firm, others like Alicia Chen and Jessica Moore found their own courage to speak truth to power. Fourth, accountability must be public and transparent to restore community trust after betrayal. Fifth, friendship can be a powerful foundation for justice work, providing the emotional sustenance needed for difficult confrontations. Perhaps most importantly, this story reminds us that no badge, title, or position places anyone above the law. Justice demands that we see each person's full humanity first before any uniform or circumstance. The Millfield transformation shows that while the path to racial justice is difficult, communities can heal and rebuild when they honestly confront their darkest truths. What moments in this story resonated most with you? Have you ever witnessed or experienced racial profiling in your community? Comment below with your thoughts or personal experiences. If you believe in standing up against injustice wherever it appears, please hit that like button to help more people see this important story. Subscribe to our channel for more powerful narratives about overcoming discrimination and holding power accountable. Share this video with someone who needs to understand the real human impact of racial bias in our systems. Thank you for joining us in this conversation about justice, friendship, and courage in the face of corruption. Remember, real change begins when ordinary people refuse to accept injustice as inevitable.